Coming out of week 5, we've got more risers and more fallers. And today, Jeff Bell and I are going to discuss some of the biggest movers after the week. Just a reminder, these are rest of season rankings, not pure dynasty rankings, but it's a good jumping off point for us to have some good dynasty conversation here. And the first guy I want to talk about, Jeff, is J.K. Dobbins. I mean, he is running away with this job. He looks fantastic. And what I wrote in my write-up is that I have a little bit of trepidation to move him up too high just because we have seen the career of J.K. Dobbins. But when he's healthy, like you're plugging him in as a high-end RB2, right?
Yeah, this is really interesting because that Monday night game against Cincinnati, we saw them almost a near equal split between RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. And really I think, I know he got to 100 yards, but is that J.K. Dobbins' lowest score of the year against the Bengals? Because
I'll fact check you as you keep talking, but yeah, that sounds about right because we have seen a lot of teams are just kind of using the Bengals as, hey, let's deploy some new guys. Let's try out some new things. Let's play with our food a little bit. I don't think anybody's going into the Bengals thinking like we need to be ready for this matchup.
Yeah, and so that was the smash spot for J.K. Dobbins is more my point, and because we had seen heavy usage, like primary bell cow usage basically up to before that game, and then we saw that split coming out of that game. There was news items like on the telecast, they were talking about how Sean Payton wanted to be very, very intentional with RJ Harvey and have a split. And kind of before that Bengals game, they were kind of like letting it go with feel, and it was landing too much on J.K. Dobbins on going with feel, whereas they were much more like, these are going to be RJ Harvey's plays. And then we came out in week 5 and RJ Harvey was hardly utilized at all. Back to Tyler Bidet, because I always say that one wrong. Tyler Bidet being back as the pass catching back, RJ Harvey being back to basically a timeshare on the underside of a timeshare, and J.K. Dobbins being back to the primary bell cow carrier.
And Adam Prentice coming in as fullback and getting those touches again, which always end up driving us a little bit crazy. But yeah, this is a tough matchup, and where we saw them, and I feel like this is like maybe something that we should have paid a little bit more attention to. Where like Woody Marks, we saw him really blow up in an easy matchup where they had a lot of opportunity to get this guy some run. And when we saw it 2 weeks ago, the Broncos like really letting it loose with RJ Harvey late in a blowout game, but we see that like when these teams have to have good, tough matchups, and they're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles last week, they're going to lean on the guys that they trust. And that's J.K. Dobbins, a veteran who doesn't have the lapses in judgment that a rookie might have and can hit his blocking assignments and do all of the good things. I mean, J.K. Dobbins, like when he's healthy, a top 10 running back in the league. And I'm not talking fantasy. I'm just saying like pure running backs. Of course, the issues are the injuries, and it has been one after another. I was looking the other day, man, since his rookie season, he's missed an average of 9.6 games per year. That is crazy. Like this guy has missed 2/3 of his NFL career since coming into the league. But and I think because of that, that's why it does feel like a ticking time bomb. Like it's only a matter of time before something happens. But I think that we have to look at the running back position in such short windows. And whether it's, 1 more week, 4 more weeks, or maybe we get lucky and get the rest of the season, when J.K. Dobbins is out there in this offense, we're looking at him as like a top 12, top 15 fantasy running back, and you just got to keep him in your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows I am the Buckeye guy, but J.K. Dobbins being at Ohio State, and it's really interesting because the wide receivers obviously get all the attention and deservedly so, but J.K. Dobbins was pretty good at Ohio State and is now pretty good in the NFL. And the 2019 Buckeyes will be forever the most heartbreaking team because they got absolutely robbed against Clemson in the semifinals. And had they played LSU, that was the fabled Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase LSU team. And that Ohio State team had Justin Fields, J.K. Dobbins in the backfield. They had Garrett Wilson. They had Chris Olave. They were loaded to bear. And that would have been an instant classic game. But the SEC officials did not want to see Ohio State going up against their precious LSU. And so that's neither here nor there. Not much to do with a fantasy show in week 6 of 2025.
Yeah, I think we just set the record for Jeff getting on his Ohio State soapbox for the earliest moment in the show. Here we are about 4.5 minutes in, and Jeff is already there. So let's keep moving down the list here, Jeff. Rachaad White, another big riser. And I think this is just more of a reminder. I thought it was like so just perfect the way that 2 years ago, as the full-time starter for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Rachaad White was the RB7 on the year in half PPR leagues. And what did he do in his one opportunity as a starter last week? He was the RB7 in fantasy football. Just a quick reminder of like what he does. And Rachaad White, he's a very good running back. Like, he has the size that we want to see for a 3-down back. He can catch balls out of the backfield. He does everything that we want to see from a fantasy perspective. The only reason he's been pushed out of this role is because Bucky Irving has been spectacular. Like, he has been a fantastic back since coming into the league. So this is just a reminder that, one, there's elite injury away upside for Rachaad White, especially in this offense. And two, Rachaad White is still a good back, and he's going to hit the market pretty soon. So one of those guys that I'm going out that I'd kind of forgotten about that I'm going to be trying to acquire in dynasty leagues.
Yeah, I think that that's a great call out, just something to get ahead of, because we're seeing it with Javonte Williams play out in the best possible way. But Rachaad White, it's icky, it's gross. Like, he's not that good. Bucky Irvin's so much better. I mean, there was a lot of talk going into this game that it was going to be, well, Sean Tucker's going to step into the primary role, and they're just going to keep Rachaad White stuck in his role, basically. But I think it's a good lesson to look at this and to say, usually if you've got a primary back like Bucky Irving and he's going to be out, like you're thinking short term, you're going to plug the backup right in there and probably ride him for a game or two instead of activating the third string back or getting too fancy with your game planning on it.
Yeah, and I think looking at it, like, this is the final year of Rachaad White's rookie deal. The best case scenario is that he kind of turns into a Javonte Williams type of player where he lands in a place where it's a good offensive environment and they lean on him and he's the workhorse. And what is the worst case scenario, Jeff? That he re-signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers where he has elite injury away contingent upside. So, I mean,
Yep.
I feel like this is just a good bet to make at this point. And I think there's going to be a lot of talk this offseason about going out and acquiring Rachaad White before he hits the market. But before that buzz starts, just go do it now in October, in the middle of the season, when nobody's thinking about this upcoming offseason. Another player we want to talk about, we talked about him briefly on yesterday's show when we were talking about running back usage trends, but just kind of glossed over him. Michael Carter, the clear workhorse in this very frustrating loss to the Titans. We saw Amari DeMercado get a handful of touches. We saw Zonovan Knight, Bam Knight now, I'm sorry, get a handful of touches. But Michael Carter, 18 carries, 5 targets. Do you think he continues getting this workhorse treatment from the Cardinals?
Yeah, that would be my expectation. I think you're going to still get the other backs getting some touches. Even after Amari DeMercado had the fabled drop, he still was playing. So I just think they view him as the third down back. He had one random game 2 years ago, I think, where he got heavy volume. But other than that, this coaching staff has kept him in that third down role in every opportunity. That's just where they view him and value him. And they have gone to a split backfield. It's what it's been. It's when it was James Conner and Trey Benson, it was a split backfield. When it was James Conner and Amari DeMercado, it was a split backfield. And so I think that they just view Carter as a guy that they're more comfortable with taking the early down reps.
So how do you view a guy like this? A guy who is a day 3 running back that's never really done too much, but the opportunity is going to be his for what we assume to be the next 3 weeks or so. Are you trying to trade for a guy like this? Are you looking at him as like a throw-in in a bigger trade? Or are you just saying like, hey, if I need a running back, like, I'm fine burning a 3rd-round pick to go get Michael Carter? Do you think that's a little bit too rich?
I don't trade for, I trade for Michael Carter's when they're backups. I don't trade for Michael Carter when they're starters. And
you're trading your Michael Carter's away right now for 3rd-round picks, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yes. And that's exactly it. I'm ready. I will ride him until I don't got him if I can sell him. But if I am holding him in a dynasty league, like, yeah, give me that 3rd-round pick and I'll move on and I'll load up my next backup running back that becomes a start for a moment or two. And so
and then flip him when the opportunity arises and just keep churning and churning and churning. I've played enough dynasty leagues with you. He practices what he preaches, folks. This is exactly how Jeff Bell plays dynasty. Let's talk about a wide receiver here, Jeff, and hopefully this one doesn't sting. I kind of feel bad, if I'm being honest, bringing this up. Stefon Diggs, as a riser for me right now, brutal Sunday night matchup. But Stefon Diggs, man, he's really turned it on over the last 2 weeks. Through the first 3 weeks, his 17-game pace, 85 targets for 635 yards. 17-game pace over the last 2 weeks. We love blowing up these small sample sizes. 161 targets and 2,100 yards. So we expect that the real Stefon Diggs is somewhere in the middle there. But, the way that I'm kind of looking at this, I think Stefon Diggs, it was a miracle that he was on the field week 1. I mean, like a midseason ACL tear at his age. Like, I thought he'd come back sometime midseason. He was a full go in training camp. He was out there in week 1. And I think what we saw through the first couple of weeks was him kind of rebuilding that trust in his knee and shaking off some of the rust. Stefon Diggs over the last 2 weeks to me has looked like prime Stefon Diggs. I think that this is very notable, and we saw how instrumental he was in Josh Allen's development. I think he's going to be that same type of player for Drake May.
Yeah, I mean, I was interesting. He only played like 50% of the snaps. It felt to me like he was every time they needed a big play, there he was. I mean, I'm happy for the guy. So like obviously Buffalo ended the way that it ended. He got to a place mentally or whatever that he didn't feel valued, and he went on along his way. And I feel like if he had cared half as much as he cared Sunday night against one of these Chiefs matchups, then maybe the Bills would be holding a Super Bowl ring at this point. But that's neither here nor there. But good for you, Stefon Diggs. You know, you had this team that invested heavily when you traded Justin Jefferson away for you, along with a bunch of other picks, made you generationally wealthy, but apparently they've wronged you in just so many ways that you just had to, in a national spotlight game, just show everybody the city, that the stadium, maybe the last Sunday night game in the stadium, that that these fans that poured their heart out for you for years, you just had to show them how much not playing for them meant to you. So good for you, Stefon Diggs.
So it took 4.5 minutes for the Ohio State, and it took 11 minutes for the Buffalo Bills commiserating. I'm sorry, Jeff, we're getting we're striking some emotional chords on today's show, but I think like the what do you expect? Like if you had to say, like, you know, I talk about like the ludicrous splits from the first 3 weeks and the last 2 weeks. What do you think? Like if you had to look from here on out, week 6 through the end of the season, if we had to blow out the 17 game pace there, what do you think is realistic for Stefon Diggs? Like, am I crazy to think that like a 1,300 yard pace isn't that crazy? Like, there's no other competition for touches here. We've got Hunter Henry, who's a very good tight end, and we've got a bunch of day 3 wide receivers that don't really want to step up. I mean, I don't know why we can't see Stefon Diggs just in this target hog role.
Yeah, I know for me, when I did my modeling of all the offenses, like my numbers were very aggressive on Stefon Diggs. And then it was kind of leading up to the season, it just was not very positive news that we were getting about Stefon Diggs. We were just getting, that he was like playing half the snaps, which by the way, he played half the snaps. So that's interesting. But like stuff like that of like, there's a lot of sub packages he wasn't involved in. He's kind of on and off the field. And really kind of at the close of the season, it got really hot and heavy on Kayshon Boutte. And then we've kind of seen him. He's out there, but he's like definitely nothing like week 1, the performance off of him. So he apparently is the week 1 guy this year, that the Isaiah Likely of this year, basically. But yeah, it's there for him because Mac Hollins is playing most of the snaps as the outside receiver, and Mac Hollins does what Mac Hollins does. He's very good blocker. He'll get deep occasionally to get a touchdown on you, but other than that, you're not really involving him in the offense. Hunter Henry's so weird because it like comes and goes, where it's like it feels like sometimes he's Trey McBride, and then other times it's like, oh yeah, I forgot Hunter Henry's out there on the field. But that's kind of the role for him. We're not seeing Kyle Williams really step up. We're not seeing some of the other Demario Douglas.
Demario is just a complete afterthought.
Yeah. Complete afterthought, just not even hardly involved at all. It was it's got to be in his head, because I know that I saw the clip. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Somebody had broken a long touchdown, and like the entire sideline was basically like, Demario, it was your block that did that. Like your block did that. It was like, so it's got to be something going on mentally with, like trying to build him up. There's got to be something going on there with Demario Douglas, but it's there for Diggs. I think Diggs can be a wide receiver 1 over the rest of the season. That being said, I think the Saints are the definition of a letdown spot. So I mean, that's a road game of the Saints. That is just screams letdown. So we'll see what they do this Sunday.
We were talking about Mary Douglas. We talked a little bit about like getting in the head and the emotional aspect, and Stefon Diggs coming back in this like emotional night in Buffalo and all this sort of stuff. And it's a good segue for the next guy I want to talk about, Xavier Legette, who you have talked about, Jeff, is like a very emotional player. He very much so wears his emotions on his sleeve. And what we've seen through the first couple of weeks was that like he just wasn't there. Like the involvement was there, but dropping passes, just not hitting his assignments, seemed like he was running the wrong routes. Like it was just a really frustrating first couple of weeks for Xavier Legette. And what we saw last week when he returned after a 2-week absence from injury, it's not like he lit the world on fire, but I think there was still enough positivity to take away from this game that we can look at him as a riser. First of all, he ran the second most snaps on the team behind only Tedero McMillan, had an early touchdown that he's got to feel good about. Then he also had a big catch on the game-winning drive as they were pushing the ball down the field. So this is one of those situations where I think now, like, he's got his confidence, he's got his groove back. He's a full-time player with just unbelievable athleticism, and now it seems like he's got a little bit of his mojo back. And that, to me, just kind of like puts Xavier Legette right back to where I had him in my pre-draft rankings, which was a very high upside wide receiver 4.
Yeah, I wish I was there with you. I'm not quite there. Like I think it was. I know I was very ahead of consensus on my ranks this week, and then I saw after you got the touchdown, because when you are a neurotic degenerate like me, when you put your ranks in and somebody like Xavier Legette gets a touchdown when you're ahead of them, you check and see where you landed with the field. And I saw you way up there, and I said, "Good job, Dave. Like you were on this. Good job."
Thank you.
But I think getting to a wide receiver 4, I'm not quite there yet, because I just need to see some consistency. But I was very high on him in the preseason, and it's there for him. It's there for him to be the on the field every single down, the wide receiver 2. There's schemed opportunities for him here. That there's a lot for him to take advantage of, and I think that I'm quickly developing the soft spot here, because it seems to be like these big, strong, fast wide receivers that go in round 1. Everybody hates them, and they're like my damage toys basically at this point. And so it's like Legette, Keon Coleman, Quentin Johnston is like my shining example, but it's like these guys that unfairly take.
Everybody just thinks that all of these guys will be Traylon Burks. Like, I think that's just it. Like, well, Traylon Burks, he was a bust, so every guy that remotely reminds me of Traylon Burks, they're going to be a bust too. And yeah, I think there's a little bit more nuance to it. But also, as you talk about, Jeff, you made a very good point a few weeks ago. I can't remember what show it was on, but you talked about how, like, these bigger guys are a little bit, it takes them longer to develop. They're not just the super twitched up. We see like a Devonta Smith come in and just immediately make an imprint in the league, and Xavier Worthy and Zay Flowers and Jalen Waddle, guys that just like come in and immediately can get up to NFL speed and are making impressions in week 1. I think these bigger guys, all of a sudden they're saying like, wait, this guy that's defending me is the same size of the defensive end that I was playing against last year. Like, this isn't right. And he's just as fast as I am. So I think there is a longer developmental curve there. And that's why I'm just not ready to say that Legette is a bust or that it's overform or anything like that. I think once Jalen Coker comes back too, which they're saying could potentially be this week, I think you're looking then at a very good wide receiver trio with Tedero McMillan, Jalen Coker, and Xavier Legette. You have 3 guys that all have very good athleticism, very complementary skill sets as well. So I'm not ready to say that Xavier Legette's story is over. I'm still buying him where I can.
Yeah, I love that. And I agree with you that it's great to see him put this together, because certainly getting 8 targets and losing 2 yards to start the season was not where we wanted to be. But it was very encouraging to see him come through with a big game.
Dalton Kincaid, another big riser, and this is one you could feel good about, Jeff. Rookie season, like, Dalton Kincaid was awesome. And coming out of that year, everybody was saying it was like Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride. That was the big 3. And then Dalton Kincaid in 2024 just had this injury-plagued season, had that brutal drop at the end of the year as well. And then all throughout preseason, it was just like one injury after another. We weren't getting the best reports. And then I'll even admit through the first 4 weeks, like, the fantasy production was there, but I was like, it's a lot of touchdowns. Touchdowns are fluky. We can't keep predicting this. My goodness, his usage in that Sunday night game, running in-breaking routes, getting deep downfield, making plays after the catch, set a career high in yardage. It seems like Dalton Kincaid might be starting to become that guy, the primary receiver on the Bills that we'd hoped he would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit it exactly right. You're talking about injuries. I mean, that's really what it came down to last year, was a lost year because of injury. And I think that it's when Dalton Kincaid is the opposite of Xavier Legette. He's not ultra twitched up. So like when you're injured and you're already not physically dominant, then you've got to figure out a way to overcome it. And we know tight end traditionally has been a position that it takes some time to all the nuance involved in it, the blocking, the releasing at the right time, those types of things, all involved in that. It's a difficult position to learn and to master. And so he was in a tough spot because the expectations were sky high going into last year. Everybody had him in. I remember so many times you'd get Josh Allen and grab Dalton Kincaid the next time around on like the 4-5 turn on so many drafts, or the 3-4 turn. And that was the way that a lot of teams were being built in best ball formats. But I mean, the expectation was him being a top 5 round pick. And that was a lot to expect and to live up to as a second year player, especially a guy that's hurt. And now he's gotten the opportunity to get healthy, to reset. And there's very much intentional usage. And seeing this game was, New England did a fantastic job of shutting down the Bills' run game, and the Bills have been able to just rely on the run game through the first 4 games of the season. And so seeing that shift, the other part of it is their outside wide receivers are not the best at getting open, and they're not the best at beating man coverage. So you're kind of stuck in a situation where you're manufacturing opportunities for Khalil Shakir, and you're relying on Dalton Kincaid in the middle of the field because can be difficult to get the ball to the outside receivers.
But at least like the threat of Keon Coleman, they have to stick a defender on him because he can come down with those contested catch opportunities. And then you've also got Khalil Shakir with so much pre-snap motion and like keeping defenses on their toes and stretching them horizontally that it does open up the middle of the field, which is where Dalton Kincaid does his best. You also talk about the long learning curve and how it's like tough transitioning from college to the pros. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but I think you'll probably know this. I believe Dalton Kincaid didn't even play football in high school, right? Like he was a basketball player, wanted to play basketball in college, and then transitioned to football in college. Do you know if that's right?
Yes, it was. Yes. I thought it was like something weird like lacrosse, but like not that if you're a lacrosse player out there, and I'm not saying that lacrosse is, but it was like something obscure. Maybe it was basketball.
Basically, what I'm getting at is he has like 5
years
obscure of organized football under his belt.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, a guy that I had definitely written off in the preseason and kind of wish I had just taken last year's injuries into account a little bit more because now he looks healthy and he looks good and looks like whatever injuries he was dealing with, where there were like 3 different injuries this preseason, seem to be behind him now. Another tight end we want to talk about, Jeff, Darren Waller. I got a fun stat for you here. Darren Waller is averaging as many points per game this year as Jackson Smith-Njigba. I mean, it's been a heck of a start for him coming back in a limited role in the first 2 games. But I think knowing how this Dolphins offense operates, like they want a very condensed target funnel. I think we're going to see all of the targets going to Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, and Darren Waller. So I was very quick to react, but I got Darren Waller inside my top 12 rest of season tight ends already.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. And I think you're exactly right, talking about a condensed target tree between Waddle, Achane, and Darren Waller. So Darren Waller, think back 2 weeks ago, Monday night, when he had that catch over Sauce Gardner and jumped on everybody's radars. Who was on the field when he had that catch?
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill was on the field when he had that catch. Mm-hmm. So they walked into that game with Tyreek Hill and saying, we're scheming some stuff up for Waller with Tyreek Hill. And now Tyreek Hill out of the offense. I think so much talk last week was everybody wanted Malik Washington to become the thing, but as so often he does, my Thursday night co-host Matt Waldman had a really good point about Malik Washington, of basically saying he's probably not going to grow his role a whole ton outside of what he's already doing, because he's already in a very scheme specific role. And what we saw was you put Nick Westbrook-Ikine out there as kind of just the guy that is just going to run long and get a great separation score, while the defense does not care at all what Nick Westbrook-Ikine is doing into an area of the field that Tua Tagovailoa probably can't even throw the ball to. And so you've got that, just eliminating a defender to go with him, and you've got Malik Washington kind of staying in the Malik Washington things, and you're using Waddle all over the field as your primary receiver, and you've got Waller doing Waller things and like kind of stretching the field, and then underneath that you've got Achane doing his thing. And so like that's kind of what your passing attack is now.
Yeah. And I gotta say, like the usage from Waller, I went back, like all of his catches came exactly what I want to see usage wise from a tight end. He had 2 deep posts, which like we love those because you can catch him deep downfield and make plays after the catch. He caught a screen, which is great. It's just an automatic PPR point, and a point and an opportunity to make plays after the catch. A slant through traffic that he caught that I thought was really nice. Just showing that he still has those strong hands that made him this kind of hybrid player during his Raiders days. Those are still there. And then a goal line touchdown where they drew up, like just getting him wide open in the back of the end zone. So, I mean, 5 targets, but every single one of them is exactly what I see. It wasn't just like these little, just like dump offs in the flat where he's just going to do the TJ Hawkinson, catch the ball 4 yards downfield, fall over, and that's kind of the end of it. Like he's getting big boy targets deep downfield that are going to create a lot of fantasy points. He's also a focal point near the red zone, just like we saw last year with Jonnu Smith. So I'm buying way in on Darren Waller.
Yeah, and it just like when he was the reactions when he was signed was just he missed 1 year, and I just felt like it was.
But in that 1 year, he had a highly publicized divorce. He came out with a rap song. I mean,
sure, but it was like
mobility of it all. That's why. And like Kelsey Plum has become a celebrity in her own respect. Like I understand why we got here. And this could, open up an hour-long conversation on society as a whole. But yeah, I get why we got here is what I'm saying.
Yeah. To me, it felt like people were acting like he'd been out of the NFL for 5 years. And it was like he had 1 year off. Like it wasn't like they were, dusting off the sarcophagus of Darren Waller to bring him back on the field. He was in a football situation he talked about that he didn't want to be in because they were asking him to play fullback, and he took a year off, and then he reset and got healthy. He's probably healthier than he's ever been in his career.
We're probably not going to see Darren Waller playing fullback in this offense. I think we're going to see him very much so just playing like a glorified slot receiver role, which is what we want to see from our tight ends. All right, Jeff, let's talk about a couple fallers here. And I got to be honest, this was a tough week. Like a lot of the fallers for me, like the really big fallers were injury related, but like this deep into the season, we start to kind of get a clearer picture of what is what. Let's talk about Justin Herbert and the Chargers, though. And we talked about this briefly on yesterday's show. But we saw like through the first 3 weeks, it looked like this offense was ready to just set the league on fire. Just firing on all cylinders, running game, passing game. They were doing it all. But now Omarion Hampton's injured. Joe Alt is out, and suddenly we're looking at 2 straight losses for the Chargers. We don't feel quite as good about them as we did through the first few weeks. How much are you reacting to this? Are you trying to buy low on Justin Herbert? Or are you just kind of trying to wait until Joe Alt and Omarion Hampton come back a month from now? Or what do you think is the best actionable advice here regarding Justin Herbert?
Who does Xavier Legette play for?
The Panthers.
Who did the Panthers play on Sunday when we're
Chargers?
talking about Xavier Legette? No, the Panthers last Sunday. Who did the Panthers play last Sunday when we're talking about?
The Dolphins. Yes.
The Dolphins.
I set you up for the same Rico Dowdle bit that I did on you yesterday. Yes, the Dolphins, the get right game to get all teams right.
Yeah. The Dolphins, the Ravens were so bad that the Ravens have now allowed the second most points behind, the fabled Dallas Cowboys defense, but the Dolphins have allowed the third most points to the quarterback position. I mean, this is the most get right game that you could ever imagine on the Chargers here, the way that they started 3-0, then dropping 2 games. Now they're getting to go. And we know that backfield is shook up. Like if Justin Herbert doesn't throw multiple touchdowns and maybe flirt with 300 yards, that's when the real red flag probably comes out. But yeah, I think it's still there. I think that the injuries, the hits have taken a little bit of a toll, but we're seeing him rumble downfield. And it was there last week too. I talked about that yesterday. They hit on multiple deep shots. It was just that stupid penalties brought that back. And I have a feeling that Jim Harbaugh is exactly the type of coach that is going to clean up some stupid penalties over a week.
I have a feeling. Let's talk about one more guy here, Jeff. And I think this is a good player to talk about because, one, he's been terrible. Like we can't deny that. But 2, we do have some new news here that Joe Flacco is now joining the Cincinnati Bengals. T. Higgins, it's been bleak with Jake Browning, man. I was looking at his 17-game pace in the 3 games that he's played with Jake Browning, pacing for 391 yards on the year. I mean, like, T. Higgins was wide receiver 8 material with Jake Browning. Now that Joe Flacco is expected to join the team, we're recording this on Tuesday night, so we don't know if he's going to be ready week 6, week 7, or maybe he's just a depth piece that they're adding here. We don't really know what's going on yet. I'd imagine that we probably see Flacco out there in week 6. Does this breathe life back into T. Higgins, or do you think that we just see Joe Flacco hyper targeting Jamar Chase, and when he's not open, just getting it to Chase Brown in the flat?
Well, I mean, from the little bit of conversation I saw today, it seemed like a very good day to sell T. Higgins. So I'll say that because it does seem to be that wheels up for Joe Flacco, apparently.
You know what we call that,
I think it's
hope.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I was hoping for Jameis Winston, but, at least we have something. But I think when you look at Joe Flacco legitimately played some pretty good football to end 2023 and through 2024. So like that first off, the Browns offense that Flacco was playing in, they were down some offensive linemen. Quinshon Judkins hadn't really established himself yet, missing week 1, hadn't been there throughout camp. I think Jerry Jeudy is like the exact wrong player to be with Joe Flacco because Jerry Jeudy likes to shake and shuffle a little bit, and Joe Flacco's just going to let it rip, and you better be in the spot you're supposed to be and when you let it rip. So I think there's a valid argument that the situation should be better for Joe. I mean, you're throwing to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins right there. The situation's better when you're doing that. I have very major concerns about the offensive line for the Bengals with Flacco. I think that's my primary concern because it's not good.
So the Browns also don't have a good offensive line, and this is something that I dove into a little bit. And I'd expect that like an old statue of a quarterback in Joe Flacco would have taken a lot of sacks there. And he took 9 sacks, but when you consider how much he was throwing the ball over those 4 weeks, his sack rate was actually well below the league average. So I think that he is that veteran, like he's going to take some hits, but I think that he still has good timing. He's got good feel in the pocket, and he's going to know when to check down. I mean, we saw games where Dylan Sampson was walking out with like 8 targets because the receivers weren't getting open. Like Joe Flacco's the type, he's going to get the ball to running back's hand before he's going to get blown up in the pocket. So I think that even though he's immobile and even though the offensive line isn't great, I still think Flacco is going to be better in this situation than Jake Browning was.
He should be. And I think it's just confidence at this point. I think Jake Browning was just shot. And it was the body language for the team when Browning's throwing the... Yeah, I mean, it's a brutal schedule, but just the body language of the team. I mean, when Browning's throwing those interceptions, you see Chase just like the shoulders slump immediately. And it's like, and Bill Simmons' cousin Sal made a really good point talking about it this week on their the recap show that they do on Sunday nights, but just the body language of the way that they were reacting like during the interceptions and things like that. You could tell that that's how it is every single day in practice. And so that's where, like, when it's that bad every single day, it wasn't like a surprise, like, oh, wait, like what happened here? It was like, oh, this dude's been throwing it to the defense for the last three weeks. And I am just so tired of this. So that's where it's new life for Flacco. I think my biggest concern on Flacco would be that with older quarterbacks, we've seen it time and time again, that they just lose it. And the moments that it's lost, it is lost. And not seeing like much of any of the spark that Flacco had for like the end of 2023 or the moments when he stepped in with the Colts in 2024, not seeing any of that to really start the season for the Browns. That's where my primary concern lands on because it's been fun. The last couple of years with Flacco's been a lot of fun. It's because it's felt like it's come out of nowhere, and like you thinking about like this guy, like what could have been with this guy, because his career numbers are like way up there. It's like that he lost like 6 years of his career that we could be making the argument for Joe Flacco Hall of Fame case had he not fallen into that backup quagmire, because he'd be flirting with top 15, top 10 all-time passing numbers, and he has a Super Bowl. So I mean, that's interesting. So it was fun to see him the last couple of years. And there was a story about Mike Tomlin telling the Steelers, like, don't you dare knock Anthony Richardson out of that game and make them put Flacco in, because that's the way that was kind of was. But again, when older guys lose it, and not seeing much of that spark at all to start the season. But I mean, Joe Flacco's got to be pretty excited. And I feel like if you're Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you got to be pretty excited to have a new guy coming in here.
Well, as we do so often on the show, we just kind of use players as jumping off points. I don't think T. Higgins is a huge faller, but I did want to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and what they could look like with Joe Flacco. And I had to look it up. I know he'd been in the league for a while. Full disclosure, man, I have no recollection of Denver Broncos Joe Flacco. I mean, I just looked up like all the teams he'd played for. I do not remember that one bit.
It was, yep. It was right after Lamar Jackson took the job. It was a mess because he was there and it was Drew Lock. So it was Joe Flacco had just lost the job to Lamar Jackson. And then it was oh God, who was the coach? I think it was just a disaster.
Fangio. Yeah, I'm looking right now. It was the Fangio year, 2019,
where
Fangio
that was year. And look at who Flacco's targets were for the Broncos, because I think it might have been rookie, like third round pick Cortland Sutton, but also like I think it was like maybe like Washed Emmanuel Sand. It was just like the most brutal targets you could imagine.
That was the Philip Lindsay year. The number 2 receiver behind Cortland Sutton. You remember a guy named Deshaun Hamilton?
Yeah.
It was rough. Yeah, I kind of forgot about all this. They had late career Emmanuel Sanders, rookie Philip Lindsay. It was I do not have much recollection of that Flacco 2019 season, but it happened.
Yeah, and I think if you were to look at the Ravens team that Flacco lost his job, they weren't exactly flush with receiver talent either. It was like I remember like Malcolm Brown was out there like at times, or like that, because that was when they drafted Lamar. They drafted Mark Andrews and Hayden Hurst in that same draft. They drafted Hayden Hurst before they drafted Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. So they added in those 2 tight ends. They added in Lamar Jackson. It was pretty brutal in terms of talent around Flacco in Baltimore and then in Denver as well. And he's a guy that needs some talent around him to be able to do something. And it just spiraled in terms of like he lost the job to Lamar, and then it was just a brutal situation in Denver. They wanted to see Drew Lock come in there, and now you become the guy that has lost your job twice in a row to a young quarterback. All of a sudden we're relegating you to backup duty. And I do tend to think that there probably would have been some situations that Flacco could have been the starting quarterback in at that time. But, that you get that label on you later in your career, nobody's going to, it's almost, we started the show with J.K. Dobbins. It's almost like the J.K. Dobbins situation of no matter how good J.K. Dobbins looks, that big money contract's never coming for him.
Right.
Because a team is not going to invest in it. And, Joe Flacco just got the rep that no matter, Jameis Winston's never going to be a franchise quarterback again. Or like once you get that label, it doesn't matter where you came from. It's so impossible to shake once you get to a certain stage in your career.
And as we often do on this show, we start the conversation with T. Higgins and then just navigate our way to Drew Lock and Deshaun Hamilton. But good thing we aren't on TV where they tell us like, you got 30 seconds to make your point. This is what we get to do on this show, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you, the audience, taking the time to listen. So thank you as always for taking that time. Jeff and I will be back Friday morning with our matchup previews as we go through every single matchup in week 6, talking about the injuries, news, and notes that you need to know, as well as giving some actionable advice and takeaways and things that we'll be watching for. So please tune back in Friday, whether you're on YouTube, podcast, wherever you listen to our show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you on Friday.